Okay guys, welcome back to my channel again. It's BMW Dr. Dean here. Today I'm going to be talking you through a common problem. Last night I was looking via YouTube and all I could see was this rough idle permanent fix for the E60s and E90 on the N52 engine. People have been commenting, asking what fixed it. Nobody could fix it. People don't give a reply. People don't tell nothing. So today, I'm going to tell you what the two causes for this rough idle fix really are. As I fixed it myself when I got this car 4 months ago. It had the same exact problem. After speaking to the dealers, after working so long with BMW, I found the problem after doing much research. And I'm going to state now, because many of you will try to click on this video thinking it's Vanos solenoids, it's the coils. I'm going to tell you all now, you're completely wrong. It's nothing to do with the coils. It's nothing to do with your Vanos solenoids. It's nothing to do with any sensor. Anything to do with the engine. People will go around replacing the coils, the Vanos solenoids, and you'll probably see you'll end up back with them faults. Now, the main common cause of this is when the car's running in open loop. When it first starts up from cold, you'll get a very temporary cold idle. Again, that was fixed, but not as severe as when it's warm. Now, when it's warm, it runs in open loop, which runs off the sensors. Now, I'm going to explain to you why it does that. First off, when BMW made these cars, the E60 E90, they would not pass the emissions because their emissions were they were giving out too many emissions. So BMW had to lower the thresholds on all the sensors to meet the CO2 emissions for it to even come into this country, for the car to even be released by the government or by, in the States, by your government there as well. As the car would not be fit for sale. The same as when the Volkswagen scandal and everything else. Now, when a car's released, it has to be more emission friendly than the previous models. The E60 wasn't. So what they did was lower the thresholds for these cars on all the sensors, for the fuel injectors, so the rail pressure bar, I don't know if you saw one of my previous videos, was at 600. Before that it was at 570. The injection rate was slowed down to let less fuel and less air in, to let to have it more emission friendly. Now, after a certain amount of years, as you know, cars become non-emission friendly, so they have a bigger tolerance when cars get older for being more less emission friendly. But when they're new, they've got to be very emission friendly. That's the whole idea to sell a new car, to show it's less emissions for people to want to buy it. Now, after a few years went on, BMW released updates for this car, and the firmware updates are what cured the problem. Second of all was the battery recall. Now, the recall cable, which I've spoke about in my previous video, which will be in the end screen on this video, was a part where the cable would come loose underneath the battery cable. Now, when that come loose, it would give false readings to all the sensors. Not only false readings, it would give the incorrect voltage. Now, when it gives the incorrect voltage, the Vanos solenoids are working less effectively, which in turn is slowing them down. Now, when the solenoids are slowing down, it's creating less pressure to the Vanos adjusters, which in turn will give you a rough idle because they're not pumping at full efficiency. The new update, firmware update, changes all the thresholds, and they put everything up, so i.e. the fuel injectors to pump more fuel, the MAF sensor to let in more air, the Vanos solenoids to work at a quicker rate. So then they don't also work at a quick rate, they flush themselves. But the most important thing you need to get done is the recall. If that ain't done, you'll have power fluctuations throughout the whole car. All your sensors will go. So you'll probably realize if you change a coil, your next coil will go bad. That's due to power fluctuations. The coils can't take that. Power in, power out. It has to be a stable, complete 12-volt power supply to the ignition coils. Now, when that's done, and your battery recall, if you got that fixed, the firmware update is the most important, because that's when they changed all the thresholds for the cold running and the warm running. That stops the rough idle fix permanently. As soon as you have a firmware update, it will stop it immediately. I assure you to go and check out Nathan's BMW workshop. When I first met him, his 528i had the same problem. We updated the car and he hasn't seen a rough idle since. a cold or a warm start. He hasn't seen none. Now, I recommend, because when these cars were first released, BMW had a lot of them going back for their for the Vanos solenoids. BMW kept cleaning them. They knew what the problem was, but BMW couldn't do anything because the car was too new and it had to meet the emission threshold. Otherwise, if it was higher emissions, it would fail its MOT in the first 3 years. That's why they had to wait for after 3 years, because it wasn't due an MOT, but they had to make it emission friendly to be able to sell it. Now, in this country, we have VOSA there, which means they can check your car at any time. And when if you was to take your car in for a pre-check and they were just to test the emissions and they saw it was higher than the average, they'd think that BMW have done something dodgy with the car. So that's why after the first 3 years, they released a firmware update for these cars for the MSV70 and the MSV80 ECUs, which is the Siemens one. And they also released an update for the fuel pump module, which them two collide together and they have to be updated together. Now, once they're updated, your rough idle fix will go, because the whole idea is the fuel control module. They done a firmware on that to increase the amount of fuel that goes to the engine, and they also increase the DME for the amount of air that comes into the engine. If you've got fluctuations in your power, please get that recall done, because that will cause your rough idle 150%. That needs to be done before the firmware update. Otherwise, all that will happen, you'll keep replacing sensors and the problem will keep coming. Once the firmware update's done, you should get no more issues, because BMW sorted it that you should get you will get no faults now for the sensors, because they won't be as sensitive anymore, because since the firmware update. Instead, they'll be having the right amount of fuel, the right amount of air, the right amount of oil pressure to the Vanos solenoids, and the Vanos solenoids will be performing at their full optimum efficiency, which will keep them running completely without failing. Now, everyone knows on these N52s, the failure rate on the Vanos solenoids is very, very high, as a lot of you are aware. So, and the ignition coils, like for instance, let me just walk you through. When I reset the adaptions on this before I did the firmware up there, I had a coil misfire for cylinder 3. I replaced the coil. Let's say a day later, the problem come back saying misfire cylinder 3. Since I've done the firmware update, I've had none of them errors, and that speaks for itself, that the power fluctuated, the power, it wasn't getting the right amount of power. Now, if your car ain't drawing the right amount of power, it will cause everything to fail and the sensors not to work properly at all. But you must do the recall before you do the firmware update. Now, main dealers will do it for you, but they will charge you a pretty fortune. I know in the States it's about $400. Here it's I think it's around £250 to have but the difference with the dealer is they use ISTA-P, and they're going to want to flush the whole car at one time, and it takes about 4 to 5 hours. With the programs I use, it takes roughly 5-10 minutes for the DME update. Gearbox update takes about 5-10 minutes as well, and the fuel pump takes about 5 minutes. So in total 25 minutes, and they're the only ones you're going to notice the difference in. The rest of the updates, you're not going to notice an improvement at all. On the airbag module, the control gateway module, the MOS network, you're not going to notice any change on any of them. Even the Bluetooth module, there is no point in updating any of them. Once that's done, your rough idle fix will be fixed, which I'm going to show you in a second on my car. As you can see, I've got the ignition on, but I haven't started it. It's going to start from cold, which you'll see in the video. I'm also going to let it warm up, and then I'm going to show you it at warm start, how it starts from warm with no rough idle. Now, like I said, to do this, you must watch my previous video where the recalled battery cable is. A lot of you probably ain't aware of this, but this is the permanent fix for a rough idle. A reason a lot of you don't know this is because I know in the US, BMW dealer is not as friendly and is not as tolerant as here. They don't welcome you with open arms as like they do here in the UK, and provide you breakfast in the morning if you go for a recall or a service, or lunch, and provide you tea and treat you like royalty there. In the US, there's nothing like that. Here, BMW dealer will do whatever they can to find the problem, help you with the problem, and don't care if you use your own software to do it, as long as they help you fix that problem. Now, it took me having to get this car to check the battery cable, and also to do the firmware update to realise that rough idle was fixed, because when I first got this car, I changed the ignition coils, the spark plugs, the valve cover gasket, the PCV system, which can cause a lot of misfire codes and link codes, and also genuine BMW Vanos solenoids, which weren't cheap. They were 150 a piece. So, but that didn't cure the problem, even with genuine BMW solenoids. The problem lies in the firmware. As I say, they upped all the thresholds on all the sensors on the firmware update after the first 3 years, and it changed the whole car completely on the N52. Without having that done, your rough idle fix will not go away. The reason the rough idle is there is because it ain't injecting enough fuel to the car. The fuel pressure rail is down because the BMW have it down to pass emissions. Now because cars can have a tolerance now after a certain amount of years for the emissions to go, that's the whole reason why they allowed the firmware update after the 3 years, because if you went for an MOT or inspection, your emissions can be high regardless, because it's an older car. They expect that after years of use, but not on a brand new car, they don't. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you my idle from cold, and then I'm going to show you my idle from warm. So as you can see, there's my idle from cold. As anyone will know, these lines here tell you that the car's cold, and as you can see, it's running in a closed loop because the idle's high. But as you can see, there's no fluctuation in the idle, no rough idling in the car either, as you'll be able to hear. Due to my microphones, you'll hear the vibration. That's how your idle should sit on a closed loop. Now we'll just let it get warm, but as you can see, the idle is sitting dead straight, no fluctuations either. And this is from cold start. It is actually raining here, as you can see. It's raining everywhere, and the car's been sitting all night, and that's straight away first time start from cold with no fluctuations, no nothing, just idling perfectly. Now I'm gonna let this car get warmed up, and then I'm gonna stop it, which I'll show you in a video, and then we're gonna restart it from warm. But as you can see, the idle's staying dead steady, it's warming up properly. So, and this is all since I've had the recall and I flashed the firmware. Since I reflashed the firmware on this car, the car has been absolutely driving like a dream. Show you guys, as you can see, my idle's sitting dead at 650 RPM. I know that as I checked that with E60, and it sits bang on 648 RPM, which is normal. Now when you rev it up, as you can see, the needle goes up nice. There's no hesitation. It revs and it comes back down properly. As you can see, back to 650 RPM with no issues whatsoever. As you can see, I will do it again. It just revs nicely and freely. Obviously, I don't want to press it too much because the oil pressure ain't reached to the engine yet correctly. But as you can see, it sits back down right on its RPM. Now, as most of you will know, that's very rare for any N52 to do. Most of them will start from cold and give a very big problem with the rough idle. But as you see, mine don't do that. Now I'm just going to show you, once the engine warms up again, how it starts from warm. As you can see, guys, my car's now warmed up and the idle is still sitting solid steady. Now I know none of you are going to actually believe this, the car is fully warmed up, but what I'm going to do is turn the car off and turn it back on a couple of times just to show you that the rough idle is cured. And obviously I'm going to leave the camera on while I do this, so now I'm going to turn the engine off, as we're going to do like so. Then we're going to put our foot on the brake as it's automatic and restart the car again. As you see, fires straight up, no hesitation, no misfire, no rough idle. As you would see, my arm would be rocking on everywhere, and I'm holding onto the steering wheel as well. Now that's the idle since the firmware update. Now, as you can see, this is the permanent fix and the permanent solution for the N52 for the rough idle. Now I'm going to just stop it again and restart it from cold. So basically now, when it first fires up in cold, they run it closed system straight to an open loop to stop the car rough idling, and now they put more fuel into the engine as well when it first starts up to keep the idle increased. So as you'll see, we'll turn it off again, then we'll start it up again. As you see there, from warm, no rough idle, solid start. Like I say, this is a permanent fix, guys, so don't think that this is a temporary fix. I haven't changed anything. It's just a firmware upgrade and the battery cable recall that's done this. Now I would like you all to like, share and subscribe to my channel, and please share this video, as there's many videos online giving people false hopes and people never come into an end. This is the end solution for the N52 engine, and the N52 B25, the N52 B30, all these N52 engines with a rough idle. This is your permanent fix for your car. Most people don't know about this. Like I say, in the States, dealers there treat you completely different, are not willing to help you. This is the permanent fix to get your firmware upgraded and get your battery recall cable done. Those are the two important things. Thank you for watching my channel, guys. This is BMW Dr. Dean here. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope it's going to help everyone you know greatly with an N52 engine who's struggling with this problem. I know it's helped me greatly, because when I got the car, it was rough idling like anything. As everyone knows, these cars are bad, but this is a cure for the E63, E60, E90, any car that was released that year with an N52 B30 engine. This is the cure. It's not your van or solenoids, it's not your ignition coils. So before you start checking them, that is not the cause. Also, the Valvetronic motor, I'm going to be putting in the description most of the fault codes that come up for this reason. And for the rough idle, which you'll get 2 AA7, which is usually van or solenoid related, and camshaft sensor. It's none of them. It's to do with your battery power fluctuating. Thank you very much, guys. This is BMW Dr. Dean here. Please like, share and subscribe, and please leave a comment in my box below. Please watch the end screen video for where the battery cable is. And thanks for watching. Goodbye.